On this channel, I only ever review products that I actually use, and more than that, it's products that I think that I'll still be using in 12 months' time, so I'm quite picky about my software. That being said, I wrote an article 2 weeks ago on my blog about noise reduction in DxO PhotoLab. And in that article, I pointed out that Adobe had made huge strides forward and that the gap between the two products was really quite narrow. I called it in favor of DxO at the time, and I think I was right in doing that. But I speculated how DxO might respond to the advances that Adobe had made. I didn't expect to only have to wait 2 weeks to get that response, but here we are. A new version of DxO PureRAW 4 has just been released, and I'm going to review it now. So I got my copy of PureRAW 4 a week ago. I haven't had time to really drive it to extremes, but what I have seen is undoubtedly impressive. This is a real step forward. It is a much more flexible tool now, and what it does, for those who don't know, is it is basically a preprocessor. So it enables users of Lightroom and other photo editing software to get the gains from DxO technology, pre-process their RAW files and bring them back into their familiar environment for continued editing. What's the plus side of doing this? The plus side is that you're going to have a much better quality RAW file to begin with, and your pictures will therefore be much better at the end. You're going to have more to work with. This is big, I think. The gap has just got wider, and it'll be interesting now to see what Adobe do in response. Let's have a look at the review. Okay, what we're going to do now is to look at the workflow for DeepPRIME moving from Adobe Lightroom. So the scenario is that I, the photographer, am using Adobe Lightroom as my library to manage my photographs, and I want to put them through DeepPRIME because I think DeepPRIME is essentially a better RAW processor than Adobe is. So let's have a look at how that works. So down here I've got a selection of photographs, some of them supplied by DxO. This one that I've got in the viewing screen supplied by me. So I've got the backstory of this photograph, which is simply that it was shot around about dawn. It was shot at a very high ISO 1600 for the camera that I was using, which was the Canon 5D S, and there is a lot of noise. So if we look down here, you can see just how noisy that picture is. So let's export all of these pictures into DeepPRIME, and we'll process one of them. So the way you do this is you go from the File menu, you go to Plugin Extras, and you, under PureRAW 4, you've got two options. One's Preview and Process with PureRAW 4. The other one is Process Instantly with PureRAW 4. We're going to choose Preview and Process so that I can show you how to set up the various parameters that are on offer. So we invoke PureRAW, and now we're in the PureRAW lightbox. From the off, we've got 4 buttons up here. These are the types of noise processing, denoising that you would choose. So high quality is the original. High quality is great for any photograph. So if you combine high quality and optical corrections, you're going to get a very high quality RAW file to continue working with. Prime is the original legacy noise reduction pioneered by DxO, where they started using different techniques for demosaicing and noise reduction simultaneously. DeepPRIME is the AI assisted noise reduction. So this is where they started to feed the artificial intelligence millions of photographs to analyze, so that they would have a better idea of how to reconstruct detail in the demosaicing process. DeepPRIME XD2 and XD, you've probably seen the little pop-up there. So X-trans RAW files are currently not supported, unfortunately. Probably they will be further down the line, but if you press this, you will get XD if you're using a Fuji X-trans files. Okay, out of the box, you're only going to see these two, DeepPRIME and DeepPRIME XD2. They're the current options, but you can classify these as being sort of ordinary noise removal, slightly more aggressive noise removal, fairly aggressive noise removal, and extremely aggressive noise removal. And it could well be that these, you might want a gentler approach to this. So in order to turn these two buttons on, you have to go to the PureRAW menu, you go to Preferences, you do Show Legacy Processing Methods, tick this box. Okay, so we'll save on that. And now we're just going to go down through the menus. These are the options you can choose. So optical corrections, lens softness. So what's going on here is that DxO has justly famed for their optical correction modules. Every lens and camera combination has a different set of values, which enables DxO to correct for lens softness using not a generalized picture-wide setting, but a setting that's applied to a particular lens and is therefore applied to different parts of the picture with different lenses. And you get several grades of this, so soft, standard, strong, and hard. It's not really the case that every picture needs to have hard lens corrections. Sometimes a soft picture is good. It may be part of the aesthetic of the picture that you want. So you can move this around between soft, standard, strong, and hard. I would personally, with this picture, because this is sort of pre-dawn, it's kind of soft light, you've got clouds in it. I don't want real clarity in the cloud area for sure. So I'm going to set this to standard and have a look at the end result, and if that's not done, we'll change it. Vignetting removes the dark shadows from the corner. Chromatic aberration, lens distortion. Now, if you look up here, you'll see that we've got some dead black pixels around this top corner, and you can't really make it out, but I suspect there are some down around this bottom corner as well. Now, what this is a result of the default complete image area. And to correct lens distortion comes in two flavors mainly, pincushion and barrel distortion. And in order to visualize what's happening here, if you imagine a piece of cloth attached by 4 points and upright, if you were to push that piece of cloth in the center, you would drag in from the edges on all 4 sides. So something like that is going on when you correct for lens distortion, because the natural lens distortion, if you like, is the pushed version of the of my allegory of the piece of cloth. And to correct it, we're basically pulling it back, so we're going to lose pixels around the edge. If we change this to maximum rectangle, then you can see that those dead areas have disappeared. And what's happened there is that it's drawn the picture much as you would yourself, given that the whole image area has dead pixels. So you would naturally frame it to the very edge of those dead pixels. And that's what happens with maximum rectangle. If you go to image cropped to original ratio, if you shot this in 16:9, then the output of this exercise would also be in 16:9, regardless of how much dead pixels there are around the edges. It's going to crop to a 16:9 shape. So you may actually lose more of the picture if you choose that option. We'll leave it on image crop to original ratio. Output format. DNG I would use if I was exporting this to another editing program. DNG is the equivalent of a RAW. It's a platform neutral version of a RAW file, if you like. Digital negative it stands for. TIFF will keep all of your color information. It's a processed image. I would use that if I was going to an application that understood TIFF files and not RAW files. So for example, Silver Effects Pro would be a good example. You convert to TIFF and then you operate on that in Silver Effects Pro. JPEG, if I was not going to do any processing at all, JPEGs are so compressed that there's really very little information in the file other than that you see. So doing a red correction in JPEG, for example, yields disastrous results, absolutely awful. And that's the reason why they're much, much smaller files. And the caption here estimates how much storage you're going to need for the format that you've chosen. We're going to go with DNG. Destination, you can keep them in the original image folder, which is quite neat for, if you file system tidiness. You can allocate a subfolder, image folder here. We can switch on subfolder. We can create a new subfolder. Yeah, DeepPRIME. And I might choose to do this with DeepPRIME XD2. Okay, so, or I could use a custom folder, which could be anywhere I like, and I can browse for that. File renaming, you've got most of the sensible corrections in a drop-down, so date hyphen file name hyphen sequence number, file name hyphen processing method, and the hybrid file name hyphen date hyphen processing method. Given that you've got so many options in the processing method, I like to keep that in the name. It avoids a great deal of confusion, particularly if if I try it at high quality and decide that I want it more aggressive, and then when I see the more aggressive decide I want to go back, I need to be able to identify that file from the output. And Lightroom collection import, we're going to export this to Lightroom, and we'll put it in a DxO PureRAW 4 collection. And we could choose to put it inside any other collection should we wish to. Okay, but we'll go with the default. And what you do then is simply hit the Process Now button. A couple of things to show you before we do that. If I switch DeepPRIME XD2 on, I get a couple of extra parameters to set, luminance and force details. Luminance defaults to 40. I haven't played around enough with this to know exactly what's going on there, so I would leave, in this instance, I would leave this to 40, but what I will do when I get hold of this program permanently is to experiment a little bit with those values. Force details will bring more detail out of the picture, but DeepPRIME XD2 is a lot about detail. If we go to DeepPRIME, you've got the same couple of parameters to set. Prime itself, you've got luminance, you can adjust the chrominance, low frequency noise, dead pixels, sorry, and maze. So, and here, of course, we've got the preview. So if we update the preview, that's updated. And what this will show you is the picture before and after the noise reduction demosaicing exercise has gone on. So that was my original raw file. This is my processed one. And that slight movement you're seeing in the file here is to do with the image being cropped to the original ratio. So if I change that to, in fact, if I remove that completely, now you'll see that there is no movement there at all. So this is a side effect of basically cropping the picture, doing an intelligent crop to get rid of those dead pixels. Okay, so we're going into DeepPRIME XD2, and what I would do is update my window so it's relatively instant, and then I'd simply go to Process Now. And you'll get a window which will calculate the time and okay, so this is the screen that you get when PureRAW has finished processing the picture, and you can just simply press OK to dismiss that window, and up it will come in Lightroom. So have a quick look at this at full size, bigger. And you can see there's absolutely no noise there at all. So it's a magnificent job. Take that out to 100% and you can start to see the detail. You can see there's no chromatic aberration there at all. The detail is not overcooked, so I think my choice to have it at standard lens softness was right. No chromatic aberration or haloing there, and loads of detail in the rocks. This is really very good indeed. Okay, so let's quickly run through a quick edit. I can't resist it, sorry guys. Okay, so we'll bring, okay, so we've got rid of all of the dead pixels surrounding it. Shall we straighten it? I think probably that would be good as well. That's about straight. Yeah, that looks good. Let's put it in 16 by 9. I want the top of that. We'll go with this. That's fine. That's not a problem. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to darken the sky a little bit. So for this we're going to use a local adjustment. We'll just choose sky here. It's overrun a little bit, so I'm going to do a quick subtract here. I'm going to do this with a brush. I'm just going to go over these bits here. Okay, so we've finessed that a little bit. So let's scroll down a bit, and I'm just going to drop this a tiny little bit. Perfect. Okay, I want to lighten up this foreground here a bit. This is just dead space at the moment. I want to draw the eye in towards the picture, so we'll go with another mask. And I'm going to go with a linear gradient here, and I'm just going to draw it in from that corner. I want it to come up there. Perfect. And let's just raise that a little bit. Not massively, but we just want to see something in the corner here. So that's given us a point here. I think I'd quite like to brush those rocks down there. Brush. And I'm just going to cover these off here. Okay, and let's just take those down a touch. Not massively, but just a little. And the last thing I want to do is probably just to whiten this up a little bit here. So let's have a look at our options for that. If we go back into here, we're going to see we can lift the highlights, but if we do that, we're going to bring the sky back. So I think what we want is another little mask. Now we could probably do this with a radial filter, but I think I'm going to go for a color range here. And I'm going to select, okay, that's way too much, so let's just take that out of here and subtract in with the brush. I'll make this brush bigger, and so broad brush strokes here, and take this out. Take this out here, and let's just make this brush a little bit smaller for this last one. Just gonna paint this one out here. There we go. So this leaves us with a little bit here, and get rid of these. And what I want to do is just bring that up a little bit. Now I think with that we can go back to this mask, and we can just raise that a little bit as well. You get the general idea. I think this is shaping up to be quite a nice picture at this point. I'm going to leave it here, guys, because otherwise this video will get to 1,000 hours long, and I'm quite likely to come back and change my mind about some of these adjustments. Overall settings here. A little bit more life to those extra colors. I'm just going to push up my highlights a tiny little bit so we've got a bit of life in that sky. I think this is nice. There's a little bit up here that I'm not very happy with, and I don't quite know where that came from. We'll leave it. Okay, just to summarize on this picture before we go, we've managed to make very quickly a very presentable image here. This is nice. I mean, I would tinker around with this probably for over a week or so, but we've you see the direction that this is going, and this has come out very nicely. Let's just compare this to the pictures that we had before. So pull this up and you'll see there is no noise. We've got very crisp edges. We've got a tiny, tiny little bit of haloing over here, and that distant mountain is slightly indistinct, which is a bit of a concern. But we've got a nice softness to the clouds. I think if I was to do this again, I would probably go for the even less sharp option, because this is just a little bit crisp. I mean, we're looking here at 200%. If we take this down to 100%, that's looking really quite presentable. So I think this is a massive win actually for DxO. DeepPRIME XD2 is certainly the best noise removal program I've used. There's a little bit still to learn with it around the various grades of hardness and softness. A little bit of fiddling around, but this is streets ahead of the previous picture. And what I'm going to do, just to remind us of that, is bring up that original picture again. And this is the image as processed by Adobe. So I think really there is no competition here. What we're looking at here is the default picture processed by the Adobe RAW processor. It's not a good look, whereas our completed picture here, no noise whatsoever. Fantastic. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next week. Bye now.